Thank you all for being here. I'm pleased to introduce you all to Stevie Mayhew today. He is the VP of Engineering at Actionstep, which has a stall just next door. Stevie tells me they're giving away free t-shirts, so if tech swag is your thing, make sure you go see them. You may know Stevie from the JavaScript New Zealand Slack. He's also a committee member of JavaScript New Zealand, and he's on the core development team of SilverStripe. So please put your hands together for Stevie Mayhew.
Hello, friends. It's really great to be back in Wellington and back at New Zealand JavaScript Conference. Thank you to Jen and the organising team for putting on what so far has been a great event and for providing me with a captive audience, which is even better. I'm going to be talking to you about how to identify new technology. I'll give you some insight into the processes I've followed when finding new useful technology. We'll discuss some of the implications of using it within a team and look at how new technology changes over time. Finally, we'll talk about managing developers within your team and tempering some of the shiny things with some of the battle-tested things, and how to make decisions about using each. But first, speaking of being back, I gave a presentation at this conference 4 years ago in 2017 about A-Frame. It's a totally rad tool. You should have a look. I was wondering how fast have things changed since then. I managed to write the presentation in A-Frame because I'm a sucker for punishment. This one's in PowerPoint, which is a much more simple tool. Use it if you do. There were 3 main dependencies which I used in that: A-Frame, A-Frame extras, and the A-Frame physics system. There are about 37 additional build dependencies. A-Frame itself had 16 releases since that presentation. A-Frame extras had 39 releases. A-Frame physics had 20 releases. That's 70 releases, or one about every 20 days since then. But that's not everything which I used. The build setup has had 2,293 package updates since I gave that presentation. That's one package upgrade every 17 hours for 4 years. 7 of those have been deprecated. Half of them I probably didn't need, but I was in a bit of a rush trying to get it together. Imagine me in the future and my poor self trying to upgrade it for this presentation. I didn't. So, in the world of development, things do change at a rapid pace. How do you keep up with the ever-changing technology landscape? Should you keep up with keeping up? First, I think it's really important that we look at the words new technology. We all know what technology is, but what is new? If we can define the word new in a meaningful way, we can put processes and systems in place to deal with it. So, how do we define new? One of the things which I see people calling new technology is the latest and the greatest. Not only do we, the users of it, say that, the marketing team, the developers who made it, shout it from the rooftops. They tell us that it's the best. If it's not the best, why would you use it? I like to ask my teams that question, what is the latest and greatest technology? And it's been interesting to see how their responses change over the time. I have noticed that as a developer grows, their thinking about that question changes, and they tend to be a bit more guarded in their response. Eventually, they just start telling me that there isn't a latest and greatest. There's just another new technology, and we should probably have a look at it. So perhaps the latest and greatest isn't the best way to define it. I definitely don't find it that useful, because if it's the latest, of course it's new, and if it's the greatest, we should all be using it. Drop your stuff, go out, use it, we're done. Instead, let's change that definition of new to something useful. I like to define new technology as something that we don't have in production. Not in build systems, UAT, but until it's running and it's in real life. If you define new technology in this way, that it's new until it's in production, you have to face the fact that you're working with something new for a much longer period of time than you might be comfortable. Treating it as new technology for a longer time can allow your teams to have greater comfort when things are going wrong. It can also mean that when you finally get your application into production, it can be treated as the enormous accomplishment, which it actually is. It's important to celebrate when someone does something new, as they've put in a large amount of effort and taken on a big risk trying something which they have now overcome, ultimately adding to your team's knowledge, skills, and expertise. These are good things to have in your mind, because new things are scary. Actually, new things are terrifying. If you aren't scared of what you've got yourself into when you grab a new piece of tech and start a new development project, you might want to reconsider. Here's a quick exercise. Take a long, deep breath and list everything that can go wrong with your current technology. Now, give it to a junior. Got a big list? Hopefully, it's huge. You know all of these things because you've been working with them for so long. Your past experience tempers the way which you look at potential issues and allows you to mitigate some of that risk. All right, now pick a new piece of technology. You can make one up if you want, because people do it every day. Take a bigger breath and list all of the things that can go wrong in the same junior developer's hands. It should be a shorter list. You don't know what you don't know. You don't have the experience from prior builds. You don't know how to temper the risk. You don't know what's inherent with the risk that you're taking on. That short list is far scarier in my experience because it points out inadequacy in your knowledge. You don't know how badly you can mess up until you've messed up. But don't let me finish this presentation in only 9 slides. There are some special reasons why technology is awesome. When you start with something new, it's a brand new world for you to explore. You get to learn the way in which the system works. You get to work out who's doing what with it. Delving into something new is one of the highlights of my work and something which I personally treasure. I'm really protective of my research and development time, and it helps me to understand why we're working the way we are at the moment, as well as pick up exciting things to try, smash and break, and hopefully push into a production server. The excitement of new technology or new beginnings is, in my opinion, one of the massive reasons why we continue to be developers. New technology is also challenging. It's challenging not to be an expert in something where you previously were. It challenges your assumptions about why what you're currently using is the best, which hopefully you're using the best that is available to you. It's challenging to ensure that you're doing the right thing, in the right way, at the right time. When you start with something new, it's green fields and you get to plant the flowers. Unless you have someone who can help you learn, and if you're anything like me, you'll muddle through the muck, do some basic exercises, and hopefully make it grow. It's also challenging to make your boss understand what you're doing, but I'll talk about that a bit later. One of the world's greatest truths is that as time moves on, we learn things. We can put those learnings into practice with newer technology, replacing some bad bits with some good new bits. This can mean the new tech can be the best way to do things and make the most sense. This naturally depends on your needs and what you are trying to produce, but generally it holds true. We're constantly moving forward, and keeping up with that movement allows us to do bigger and better things. What about the other side of the coin, though? If there are reasons why new technology can be great, then there should be reasons why it cannot be as well. Is it relevant? Is it something which you are going to be able to use for a well-thought-out purpose? When you're looking at the plethora of new things that come out, you should think about whether it's something you can actually use for that good purpose. If it's not relevant, but it's something fun, you might spend the time learning it anyway. We're inquisitive. Working out whether or not something is relevant is really, really hard, and you never know what you might need in the future. Is the new technology supported? It's really important to know how to get help when your application goes down. There's someone else in the other room, Reagan, I think, who helps with that. Go see them. They gave me a t-shirt. That's the shout out. Thanks, guys. Is there a paid support service? How many contributors are there to that project? How often is it updated? That's crucial, because you don't want to be ending up using something which nobody else does. If you're like me, You've built your own CMS solution in the past before turning to something like SilverStripe. It's definitely better with friends. Does it make sense for you to invest your time and your business's time in pursuing it? How much time is it going to take to train the entire team? How much time is it going to take to train yourself? How much time is it going to take to build the systems and processes around the new technology? You've all heard that time is money, but I like to think that time is happiness. The more time that you have to do things, the happier you can be. Sinking time into training or learning is great, but the less time that I feel unproductive, the more time that I have to be happy. Do you have a base skill set to use it? If you're looking at something new, it's always good to look at your previous experience as a great place to start. Is it based on a paradigm that you've used before? Is it written in a language which you understand? Does it run on a server which you have access to or could build easily? Does it change the way which your day-to-day work gets done? Is it something which is going to take you hours, weeks, months, or years to master? It's probably not going to be hours or weeks. Ensuring that you've got the time required to learn when you're starting with something new is incredibly important. Will your business give you the time and the leeway to be able to be slightly less productive while you get up to speed? Are you scratching an itch, or do you really need to use it to end up more productive and to make better quality applications? I'm a huge fan of virtuality. I even gave a presentation about a thing called A-Frame at an awesome conference in the past. I didn't think that I'd ever get the chance to actually use it for work in a production environment. But after about 6 months of playing around with it in my spare time and taking 3D photos, we started to scope a project which we had to use 3D photos to put things into the real world with. Because of the time which I spent on a non-relevant technology, I was able to put a prototype together fairly quickly, train one of my team members on how it worked, and give them the head start on the project they needed. They built a competition which is based with these photos, inserting companies' logos in a game of virtual hide and seek. Just because it wasn't relevant at the time that I was using it, didn't mean it wasn't relevant in the future. There's a lot of technology out there. There are over 300,000 packages for PHP and over 1.5 million on NPM. Some of it's good, some of it is bad. I use both. I've written both. It's not something that I'm ashamed of either, but knowing when you need something quick and dirty versus when to architect a total solution and implement an entire system is something which is part of being a great developer. Then there's the monumentally stupid. I once wrote a mail server. Well, not quite a mail server, something much worse. I was young, inexperienced, and a little bit foolhardy. There was an issue where one of my clients' mail wasn't getting delivered, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't have any knowledge, yep, it's that time, didn't have any knowledge about how to fix it, and didn't have support how to understand how a mail system works and why it was getting blocked. So as you did, I figured out I'd start sending it from a different server, and boom, problem gone, right? Yes, more problems though. I wrote a little thing which took a post request, converted it, and sent it out. That worked fine, but I'd written a relay. So I got some angry letters from my hosting provider as I started processing hundreds of millions of emails a day as people started hammering this relay, which was good because it was really well written, right? It could handle that volume. But yeah, lesson learned. Slowing down there and learning something new would have been much better and much more productive for me. So how do you make the choice about what you're going to use? You have to look at the reasons why you're wanting to try it out. Is it because it's shiny and new? Do you actually need the tooling? What's your driving motivation behind using it? Could you build it yourself? More importantly, could you build it better? Obviously, not invented here syndrome is a real thing and it is bad, but sometimes there's occasions where using something else is equally detrimental to your workflow. Don't build a mail relay, but do build a small piece of functionality that you require if there isn't something which suits your needs. Often it can be a bigger debt to try and wrangle something which is ill-suited into your applications than spending the time crafting the exact thing that you require? Does the thing which you're looking at suit your current needs? Does it provide value for your future needs? Does it go too far? Is every piece of your puzzle solved by what you're looking at? Or does it require multiple other moving pieces to be added? How many pieces are you going to need? Is it the latest and greatest fad? Is it the biggest thing on Hacker News? Is it the apple of Twitter's eye? Is it all the rage on Reddit? People on these mediums are usually very passionate about the things which they're discussing. You're going to get a skewed view of reality from these sources. I like to think of them as a great place to see things, but wouldn't think of using something purely because of the advocation of someone on these mediums. Or does someone you really admire use it? Does someone you know use it? Do they advocate its use as well? It's also a skewed perspective, but a much better one. As you grow as a developer, you learn who knows what they're doing and who doesn't. You learn who to trust and who to get recommendations from. When somebody you admire tells you that they're using something, it can be a good indicator that it's worth investigating. If you know someone who's using it, that's even better, because then you've got someone who can help you when it goes down. There are implications that you have to consider wisely in using new tech. There's a huge opportunity cost in dropping your current procedures, systems, or technology. The amount of time that it takes to train developers to adapt to the new technology, to become competent, can be massive. It's never good enough to have one expert in your team. You need at least one more. Your business can't rely entirely on someone who might get sick at an opportune moment. How are you willing to put in time into training sessions, research and development, and the general upskilling of your development teams? Your team members should be able to edit and fix bugs and issues and eventually build entirely new systems and new technology. Everyone should have some understanding, not just your specialists. How can you drive adoption in the team? You have to have people who are interested or willing to learn. If no one is interested, it makes it really difficult to propagate that knowledge throughout your team. If there isn't anyone else wanting to help, don't do it. Is it a decision that's best for your company, or is it a decision that is best for you? Will there be a benefit for the company when you pick it up that will allow things to be a bit faster, better, and easier to upgrade? Or is it something that's just for your benefit and it won't have any lasting impact on the way which your team works? So how can you mitigate these concerns? It's easy, right? Don't use anything new. No, but seriously, if you don't want to have the hassle of new technology, don't use it. I've had hundreds of successful application launches using nothing but tried, trusted technology. It's a perfectly viable approach, and it might leave you behind the curve. But if being behind doesn't concern you, you might be best to stay there. But if you do want to use new technology, there are things which you can do to prepare. View and try test applications. To-do or toy applications usually aren't enough. You should try and find something which is in the real world and using it. Judging it by how many reviews or stars it has is okay. Check how many versions it's got. See how often it's got releases. See how many people are building it. Then try and build something simple. I tend to build a game in the front end because I like games and it allows me to quickly find out what the issues are. In the back end, I'll write a web scraper. Same sort of issue. There's stacks and data structures which you have to use there, which find and undercover things. I've built things over the years that are particularly pretty and groundbreaking, and I've built things which are neither of those things. But they've given me enough insight to understand what I'm doing and whether or not it's going to be useful. You have to have enough of a project to find some kinks and enough to find out whether or not you should propose its use. Don't jump right in. In my agency life, I asked developers to present technology at our weekly developer catch-ups. That involved presenting technology to the team, a few user cases, and examples of its use in real life. Then it was reviewed as the team by a whole and a decision whether we'd allow it into the stack. The developer who raised the technology became the champion of it, and the person who trained the second person. That meant the developer who proposed it had to become an expert, had to provide guidance within the team, and had to really want to take on that responsibility as well as bringing in something new. This helped to force good decisions and make sure that we're bringing the right things into the business. In my SaaS life, we don't use as much new technology as we did in the agency world, but it doesn't mean that we don't follow similar processes. I'm lucky enough to work with a team who are experts in their fields, and they all work hard to make sure that the decisions they're making about introducing new technologies are the right ones. A lot of what we do is to ensure stability, security, and the ability us to move forward quickly in other areas using the same tech. Having a stable platform which is tied to a large cloud provider also helps us choose some things and make some decisions with direction what's available there as well. Of course, this doesn't mean that any new technology you're going to bring up is going to be accepted by the team. The business might not want to use it. It might be too specialized. It might not have the support which you require. Some of your team might not want to use new technology. That's fine, as ultimately it's their decision. They're the people who are building it every day. You should be able to articulate the benefits you are gaining by taking the path and let them understand how it's going to make the application better. Sometimes it can be a bit of a chicken and egg, as you don't want to try out new things until you've got something solid working, which means you have to have produced something before. I've changed the way which I use technology in my development roles over the years. I started out by doing whatever somebody told me to. Then I started doing whatever I wanted. And now I make sure that others are doing what I want. Learning how to approach new technology has changed the way which I approach development as a whole. When I began my career, I was lucky enough to have a good mentor, a man named Michael Mitchell. I'd urge you all to find a mentor who can help you grow. Michael showed me the ropes of doing work which you get paid for instead of just work, got me using SilverStripe, and gave me work which suited its use. I worked on projects with him for about 2 years before I decided to make it out on my own. Being an independent developer with a snazzy new business name, I immediately started using something else. Didn't think it through, didn't think about the consequences. My first failed startup went through 3 code-base changes in a year, starting with CodeIgniter, moving to Ruby on Rails as it gained prominence, and then finally switching back to SilverStripe. This was because I didn't understand at the time the opportunity cost of what I was doing by introducing new tech. Without all of these technology changes, the startup might have died slightly slower. Many years later, at Little Giant, I introduced the use of React without consulting anybody about it in my I do what I want phase. I went out and did it because I thought it was cool. But I had experience using it from a past job, 2 great resources who now worked in the React team at Facebook. The development was ongoing, backed by a giant company, and looked like it would go on an upward path. No, there wasn't a stable release, and it could have blown up in my face, but thankfully it didn't. I used it to write a small filter section for an e-commerce site, something which we ended up doing consistently throughout my career. I didn't have any processes in place back then. We were a smaller team with a bit more of a cowboy attitude. As the business grows, it's been important to put processes and systems in place to deal with the Stevies and with the new technology and ensure that we're making the best decisions for the business going forward. You can do a lot of things in a team of 10 that you can't do in a team of 2, and you can do even more in a team of 30. I really do try and encourage people to use new technology within the business. I try to ensure that my teams have the ability to build new things, cool things, using the right tools. We try and make sure that we've got the systems and the processes in place to encourage them to try that out, to have the training and development time, and to be able to work out what they're doing. We want them to be bold making decisions to try new things, but we want them to be bold in the right way, without the anxiety about making poor decisions. Working collaboratively on introducing new tech and ensuring that somebody champions it within the business has been really, really good. And we're continuing to use new things all the time. But I've learnt that to temper it with business smarts and make sure that we aren't making those decisions lightly. I'm still learning ways of making this process simpler, and I'd love to chat to all of you about your ideas. So, when do you stop starting again? Hopefully never. But make sure that you're making the right calls with the right processes to handle them and the right ideas behind them. I'm never going to stop looking at new things, and I hope that you won't either. Thank you.
Questions. We've got a few minutes for questions. There's a microphone over here, so if anyone wants to make your way over this way.
What is the latest and greatest?
It's probably just sitting in a room in the quiet with no technology and some chips. I thought I talked about that question. All right, if there's no more questions, if you want to come in, oh, there is one. Innocent.
So I have worked with a bit of Frankensteins in my career, and one of the things I struggled with was where new technology fits. How would you approach a Frankenstein?
I think that one of the really important things is to understand that the technology which you've got has got you to the place you are and is running the business and making you money. It's really important not to try and just rewrite everything, but to pick pieces of and systems which you can go, hey, how can we do this independently? How can we do this better? That's a really hard project on itself. Identifying pieces in particular sections which you can do that to becomes a project in itself. But if you have a Frankenstein and you know that it's bad, you should put the time in to understand where you can go forward and how. And then over time, things build and they snowball. It's all about getting it kicked off, getting that first bit into production, celebrating it for the success that it is, and then moving forward succinctly after that. Building a business case around that is also hard, but hopefully you've got people in your team and managers who understand that, you know, Frankenstein's bad.
Sometimes your technology becomes deprecated and you have to start again without it being a fun adventure of trying new things. Do you think that needs to be approached differently from introducing a new technology because of it being in vogue or fitting a problem you're having?
Honestly, no. It's the same thing, right? Like something has been deprecated. You've got a time frame to be able to move forward and understand what you're going to do there. Go out and look. You have to go out and look for new things, right? There has to be a decision made about whether you're going to eat that deprecation and deal with something potentially not working in the future or move forward and use something new. I think it's actually the same thing. It's not necessarily shiny because it's not something that you might be super excited about or interested in, but for the business sense, it's the same. You want to go out and find something which is going to suit the needs and move you forward. And oftentimes in that case with a deprecation cycle, it's sort of like the Frankenstein, pick off the pieces which you can and then move forward across the rest of the stack as you go. Hopefully that helps. All right, thank you everyone so much. I'm really glad that you all came to my talk and decided that I was the best one on right now. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Stevie. I look forward to your email relay being on GitHub's trending projects.